Welcome, Bruins. I want to welcome you to our webinar today, Bruins Helping Bruins, Resources for Small Businesses Impacted by the LA Wildfires. My name is Gloria Coe, and I serve as the Senior Director for Alumni Career Engagement here at the UCLA Alumni Association. And first and foremost, I want to extend my support to all of those that have been impacted by the fires, especially our small business owners. Today's webinar, we will be hearing from small business advocacy leaders and small business owners, and they'll be talking about how we can rebuild and recover and resources that you can utilize. Some quick housekeeping before we begin. Our panelists will be taking questions at the end of the program, so put your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen below. Also, closed captioning is available if you click on the Show Captions option. So that is there for you if you should need it. Also, the webinar will be recorded and made available for viewing and sharing after our program today. So to begin our program, I would like to introduce Julie Sina, our Associate Vice Chancellor of Alumni Affairs.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And thank you, Bruins, for being with us today. It's truly an honor to serve as your alumni director. And one of the things we want to say to you is that your alumni community, 670,000 Bruins around this universe, are here to support you and lift you through what we know will be not only today, but as the time moves forward with our recovery. So we are here to support you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us to let us know what other seminars like this may be helpful to you in addition to the support we can provide. I would like to introduce to you Jen Polakidis. Jen serves as our Associate Vice Chancellor for Government and Community Relations, just to give you a quick update on what's available for you at the UCLA Center at the Westside Pavilion. Jen?
Thank you, Julie, and greetings, Bruins. I wanted to just share that, as you probably have seen in the news, UCLA has donated space in UCLA Research Park, which used to be Westside Pavilion, to host the FEMA Disaster Recovery Center. And in that center are many resources. So if you have been impacted by the wildfires, recommend you come by and visit the center. FEMA has stations, SBA has stations. There are over 70 participants in that center, many government agencies, as well as some non.
And Jen, SBA is?
Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you, Julie. SBA is the U.S. Small Business Administration. You'll be hearing, I think, a little bit more about that shortly. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen. And now it's also just an honor to introduce you to double Bruin, small business owner and leader in sustainability, Jamie Knack. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you all for joining us today. We're super grateful to be able to host this discussion and grateful for the UCLA Alumni Association's support for making this happen. I'd like to welcome my panelists to the stage, the virtual stage. So Stephen, Jesse, Nicole, and Pat, if you could please turn on your cameras, and we will get started. As Julie mentioned, I'm a double Bruin. I am a small business owner, and during times like this, I always think start where you are, with what you have, with who you know. And for me, UCLA has always been my home and one of my greatest resources, and also always willing and supportive to be able to help spread resources to others during these times. We did a webinar similar to this right when COVID hit during 2020 to share small business resources and explain how to access the PPP and other funding sources. And we felt that it was time to bring the community back together. We titled this Helping Bruins, and Beyond. So many of my fellow panelists are Bruins, but others are not. And it's great for us to help share with all of those throughout the LA region who have been impacted by recent times. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Stephen Chung, President and CEO of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, also known as LAEDC, and the World Trade Center Los Angeles, WTCLA. I'd like to welcome Jesse Torres, Managing Partner and Founder of Arroyo West. I'd like to welcome Nicole Lalagwe, owner of Pasadena Wine Shop. Welcome, Nicole. And Pat Nye, Executive Director, Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center Network. So in order to make this more of a discussion, I'm going to skip the formal bios. We'll have the panelist bios pasted in the chat there. They have impressive backgrounds. We want to make sure you're able to read all about them. But I'd like to just dive right in and ask each of the panelists if you could each briefly introduce your connection to wildfire recovery and share your unique perspective on how wildfires impact small businesses and communities specific to what's happened recently in our region. So I'll start with Jesse.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you to the Alumni Association for putting on today's webinar. I was reflecting that last time I was on here was for the pandemic back in 2020, but it's always great to help support Bruins. So yeah, my connection to wildfire is both personal and professional. Personally, I live in South Pasadena, just a few miles away from Altadena, where my gym is, where many of my friends are. And unfortunately, personally, I've had both family and friends who've lost their homes in both Altadena and also in the Palisades. Professionally, as part of my company's work, is that we help around disaster recovery. We've done support for the county during the pandemic and to the LA Chamber. Before I started Royal West, I was the small business advocate for Governor Brown, and I led small business recovery for a number of disasters: the Oroville Dam spill, the 2017 Northern California firestorm, the Thomas fires, and other smaller kind of incidents. So my experience is both personal and professional. I would also have to say that, when I was a kid, my high school collapsed because of the Northridge earthquake. And so I always remember that as kind of one of the biggest things that ever happened to me until this past week. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'll be talking a little bit more about some of the work we do and what we think about when it comes to recovery, but I'll stop there so my fellow panelists get a chance to say a few words.
Thank you, Jesse. And I'm based in Santa Monica. You're South Pasadena. We also have Nicole from Pasadena. Over to you.
Yes, like Jesse, I'm in the San Gabriel Valley. I lost my home in the Eaton Canyon wildfires last week. I also own a small business. I'm self-funded. It's called Pasadena Wine Shop. We opened about 3 years ago. So I am really in the forefront of dealing with this personally, as well as dealing with it as a community. Pasadena, Altadena, South Pass, this area is incredibly well connected to each other, a very communal place. Our store has closed and transitioned all of our efforts into raising funds for the California Fire Foundation, as well as providing free wine to those who lost their homes in Altadena. So obviously it's a very personal time that I'm navigating from ground zero, as well as being really on the ground floor with my community as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, Nicole. We appreciate it. Stephen, we'll go to you next.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. I am Stephen Chung. I'm the CEO for the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. We're a nonprofit organization here representing Los Angeles County. During COVID, LADC actually worked together with a number of different partners to provide assistance for small businesses that are looking for recovery, because there's so much information going through this entire region. It becomes very confusing as our small business community is already struggling to basically operate, let alone track all the information that's coming through. So we created a partnership called Together for LA, alongside with our partners from LA Area Chamber of Commerce, also Dr. Lucy Jones Center, and a number of different partners, including West LA as well. And because of this network that we're able to create, we decided to reactivate it during this fire. And since last Tuesday, we've been meeting on a daily basis to coordinate the resources between government, public, private, nonprofit organizations so that we can streamline the information. We've now launched our Together for LA website again, basically taking what we've created for COVID, now dedicating it to wildfire recovery so that we can actually just focus on information that small business might need so that they don't have to track through everything that are going in and out and changing all the time. So Together for LA.org, I can talk more about the contents. Separately, LADC as a nonprofit organization has been here for 43 years. We help small businesses, help our workforce, help industry cluster development as well. So it's our job to make sure that we're able to provide these kind of technical assistance. So we have a team on standby to do one-on-one consulting. Our team is also at the UCLA emergency site, as well as the Pasadena City College sites as well, so that we're able to provide you direct services. I can go into a bit more detail in terms of what those services will mean for the small businesses. But really, I think a lot of us, our teammates and our board members have also lost homes and lost their businesses throughout the fires. One of the things that we want to make sure is that we have a sustained long-term recovery process, because we know this is not going to be overnight. That can be done. There are a lot of things happening right now, and we need to be coordinated. And so LABC is hoping to serve that role to make sure that we're able to streamline this and make it easier for small businesses to recover. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephen and Pat.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks to the Alumni Association for inviting us to present. So I'm Pat Nye. I lead the Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center Network, or the LASBDC. We're essentially a technical assistance partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA, but we're also funded by state and local funding as well. Our whole role here is to help advocate and support small businesses. We have a team of business advisors, essentially consultants, who work one-on-one with small businesses, really to help that small business start and grow. And in the time of disaster, we are really the centralized hub for information, really helping businesses one-on-one navigate things like financial resources, insurance claims, employee resources, rebuilding, recovery, all of those things. We're great at capital, and we're very great on the technical side of things. So we have a team of advisors. We do services in over 20 languages. So we are ready to assist, and there's no cost for any of our services. And so you can access us, by calling us at 866-588-LASBDC, or sorry, 866-588-SBDC, which is 7232, or our site, smallbizla.org. And you can get matched up with a one-on-one advisor to help navigate whatever your business might be experiencing. And I always like to remind people that in a time of disaster, there's obviously the folks that were impacted by the physical side of the disaster. Maybe their business was impacted directly by the fire, itself. But there's also a lot of businesses impacted by business disruption, things like evacuations, power outages, things like that. We're here to help those businesses get back on their feet and recover as well.
Okay. All right, Stephen and Pat, I know you both mentioned one-on-one support, which I think is fantastic. I didn't know about the 20 languages, Pat. That's also really, really nice to hear. What does a one-on-one session look like? What are the questions being asked? And also, I know there's a big focus on financial assistance, and it's taking some time, but some programs are launching almost every day. I see a different program. So if you could each share what those one-on-one sessions look like, and what questions you're fielding, the most common ones, and then where are the financial resources? Where should they be looking?
Steve, do you want to lead off?
Sure. So what we're seeing right now is immediately, I think a lot of companies are looking for insurance. So they have a lot of insurance questions. And a second, they're also struggling a little bit because some of them have actually lost all their information. A lot of our small business, they have not completely transitioned to all cloud-based solution. So some of them actually lost their EIN number and additional information. So they need folks to review their legal contract, how do they apply for insurance. So those are the immediate questions that are coming up right now. What we're trying to do is make sure that in the one-on-one session to really address those needs, right? To understand what they have, what they don't have, what the questions are. And as we're collecting them, we don't LADC, our staff is basically processing information, trying to connect them with the right resource. We won't be able to handhold them through the entire process, because your insurance claims versus your rebuilding versus the permit question versus asking for LA County whether you can be waived some of the fees that you're paying. Those are all the questions that are coming up. So we're trying to collect all that information. In terms of what questions do we ask, it's more all the other way around. We're trying to basically see what questions the small businesses have to really start where they're at. It becomes very difficult to be overwhelming the small business with a whole bunch of different questions at this point. It's more important for us at this point to be really tracking what they need first, and then start matching them with the right resources. I don't want to overwhelm the audience, so I'll let Pat speak as well, but later on, perhaps we can talk a little bit in terms of what resources are available to them, so that we can start talking about where they can go to start looking for that information. Pat?
Yeah, very similar to what you described, Stephen. Initially, it's an assessment of where they are, what their needs are, what their immediate challenges are. and then sort of navigating them through the process of what the most relevant resource is. We're also hearing a ton about insurance, primarily because that sort of interplays with things like the FEMA resources and even SBA lending resources on what you can qualify for and sort of the timing of things. So that's a big question. And then, of course, all of the financial resources. So those are sort of the two biggest things right now that we're helping coach people through. And like you said, people are missing documents, things like that. We're very good at sort of helping them figure out how to recover that stuff, get new copies, be able to fill out those applications and stage, according to the process of what resources to go for at what time, because there really is a timing aspect to a lot of this for those businesses.
And Jamie, I'll jump back in here. It's an all hands on deck situation. Pat and his team are fantastic, but they're also limited in terms of, the number of staff member they have to answer all the questions. Right now, we're still estimating in terms of what the impact is going to be, and the information is not clear. LADC, we started doing economic impact analysis to at least get a better understanding. I can let you know that right now, the preliminary data, before all the surveying is coming back, what we know is we took the Cal fire map and used GIS as a way to basically overlay it with existing company information. And we found that within the fire burn zones, of Eaton and the Palisades fire, there are about 1,863 companies that are located within the burn zone, directly impacting about 11,840 employees. Whether they're all impacted, whether their companies and their businesses are disrupted or they can continue, we don't know that information, but at least we have a rough estimate. With that, 1,863 companies is a lot of companies. So that's why it's an all hands on deck situation. And whatever we can do, we want to make sure that we're able to link it with the great resources that Pat and the SBDC is able to do, making sure that they're connected with SBA or FEMA or whichever group that there is. But at this point, it becomes, again, very overwhelming for our small business to track all that information that's coming through. So if either of our groups or additional groups can basically provide that guidance, we'll be happy to do so.
Amazing. Yeah. And one of the things we want to do today is gather all of those links and resources and send a follow-up email to those attending the webinar. Nicole, I want to give you a chance to just respond, because I know as a business owner and homeowner, both facing losses on both sides, when you hear about one-on-one consulting and things like that, I imagine your time is very limited. Like every day you're probably like, which thing do I do first, right? Any thoughts there or ideas to help other business or homeowners?
Yeah, to clarify and to highlight what you said, I was actually not a homeowner, I was a renter. And as a small business owner, everyone can relate to this. You don't take care of yourself, you take care of your business. And I didn't have renter's insurance because why would I? I think anyone who's been personally affected and also owns a business most likely has personal needs that either weren't protected or haven't been addressed. So I do want to at least clarify and start there. Can you ask your question one more time?
Sure. I was just thinking from your perspective and hearing that these resources exist and that you can get the one-on-one sessions with a business advisor. How do you feel like from a impacted small business owner perspective, are you hearing about these resources or what would be most helpful?
I agree. And thank you for reminding me. Obviously, it's a crazy time. I have fire brain is what I call it. Yeah, a lot of us are just thinking day to day right now because that's all we can do. Most of us who have been impacted personally, professionally, or both are inundated with calls and emails and offers and volunteers, and which is wonderful. I think what's really important for all small business owners to keep in mind that are affected at all is this is going to be a really long haul. This is not an immediate rush to relief of, okay, I just need to figure out how to get through the next month and I'm going to be okay. Anyone in these affected areas is going to have a shortage of customers, is going to have a strain on labor, a strain of resources, obviously. And so I think, even if, I think also as small business owners, we all care about our community. We all really want everyone around us to be okay. I think it's really important for all of us, myself included, to take the life vest and recognize we don't know what's going to happen the next few years. We should all be trying to protect ourselves in order to protect our communities. Again, back to highlighting how we all might like not think of ourselves. I think just keeping in mind this is going to be several years of a rebuild. And so even if maybe right now you don't have time to reach out to these organizations or these people who want to help, please make it a priority in the near future. And this is a reminder to myself as well as everyone else, because this is going to be a long journey for us.
Thank you. Stephen, you mentioned the long-term approach, and I know that you think that way as well from your organization standpoint. So could you share with us, and I know you have to jump pretty soon, so I want to make sure we get the resource links from you as well, and from a financial assistance perspective and others, and then also what your medium to long-term perspective is and where we're going.
Yes, actually, I canceled my 10:30, so I can actually stay on longer. So be happy to continue with questions. So the long-term recovery process is this: we looked into other fires, other natural disasters like the Paradise Fire and also the Maui fires as well, to see what their processes are like. And exactly what Nicole said, this is going to be a long-term recovery process because some of the infrastructure has been destroyed. In order for you to move in, you really have to look at the cleanup. You have to look at Environmental Protection Agency coming in with the Department of Toxic Substance Control to make sure that it's safe for folks to actually re-enter that space. Then you have to basically do cleanup of actually taking care of the debris before you can start building the infrastructure that's been melted because of the fire, whether this is water pipe, whether this is gas line, whether this is electricity wires or internet cables. Those are all need to be replaced at this point to get the funding from the federal government and the state government and the county government to get the permitting process. Just to start, it becomes a very complex process. So the small businesses, that's not going to be on top of mind. So that's why Nicole's absolutely right. It's really about the long-term strategy for us. With LADC, we're looking at it from the perspective: how do we work with the public-private, nonprofit, labor, environmental and community-based organizations to make sure that we have a strategic approach to this, so we're not piecemealing it. If we're able to build back, can we build back better? Can we build back more resilience? Can we make sure that we're able to keep the community perspective and that aesthetic as well, right? So all those need to be in consideration, and it can't be done without planning. And that's why that planning process, that consensus building process, you can imagine there are going to be a lot of different folks that are coming in, offering their best support. They have gone through Katrina, they've gone through a lot of the other disasters, but what they're bringing the solution doesn't include the local perspective. So we want to make sure that the local perspective, folks like Nicole and the businesses that are there, are able to be at the table shaping their own future. So those are the ways forward planning. It sounds a bit kind of far away, but if we don't start this process now, what we're afraid is that other folks will start planning for us, and we don't have local control over that. And when it comes back, the community might be completely different, and the folks might not be able to come back into the same Altadena and Palisades that we know.
Jesse, I know you have supported small business relief efforts across a number of different natural disasters and occurrences over the years. You were out this weekend volunteering at the UCLA site. So there are multiple physical sites, and then there's also the online website where individuals can access information, as Pat mentioned. What would you say are the biggest tips or strategies that you would want to share with small business owners during this time?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think, from what I've seen in a number of especially the major fires, is that at the very beginning, there's just this huge kind of swell of adrenaline is maybe the best way to explain it. Like, everybody has this urgency to, one, make sure that their loved ones are safe. You see even on the folks who aren't impacted, this kind of sudden rush to try to volunteer and help and like donate things, right? So there's just a lot of kind of energy that's being kind of exhausted in those first, early few days, in that first couple of weeks. For business owners, I think what's really important is, one, to just acknowledge that and give yourself grace. Typically what we have seen just working in disasters is that folks aren't even thinking about their business until maybe 2 weeks in. Once they really kind of feel secure about where they are, where their families, are they being taken care of? Have they kind of figured out their kids and where the school is going to be looking like for them? So you got to give yourself grace and make sure that you're taking care of your personal safety and those of your loved ones first. One thing I recommend is that, if you go to these disaster centers, it can be very overwhelming. there's a ton of resources. I went to the Pasadena Center, went to the West Side Center, and just tremendous amount of information. I always suggest in the first couple of weeks, if you're a business owner who's been impacted, is just get your bearings, collect as much information as you can. I love it when I go to the disaster center and they have a map of who exactly is in the room and what they're offering, because that can help spring ideas, things you didn't think about, like, oh crap, I got to think about my vital records. I got to be thinking about my insurance policies. And you might not be in a position to take action right then and there, but at least you have an understanding of, okay, here's what's available. Here's the phone number to call. Here's the website I can go to when I'm ready to access that information. One thing that helped for me, as far as kind of the next step from there, is just coming up with short-term scenarios for yourself. I was lucky enough to start my business at the very beginning of the pandemic, and Jamie knows my wife, who's also an entrepreneur, like her business stopped because she works in entertainment. So I remember thinking, what the heck am I going to do? What is life going to look like, for me and my family if we suddenly lose all of our income? So I just started doing like rudimentary kind of scenario analysis, like, okay, what does business interruption look like for me if it's 3 months? What if it's 6 months? What do I mean by business interruption? And I would really just kind of write notes to myself at night. And there's different documents I can send over to kind of help you do that kind of thought process. But it really kind of helped just to kind of write things down and think about, okay, what could it look like and what resources might I need in order to get over that hump? And what I have found is that once you have a sense of like, okay, here's how much cash I might need, or here's what resource I might need, it's a lot easier than to have conversations with, say, the LADC or LASBDC about what exactly you need to move forward. But until you've done that kind of really quick and down and dirty scenario analysis, it can be really difficult to think about, okay, what resources do I actually need in order to move forward with my business, right? So a lot of it's just like, it doesn't have to be like real scientific. A lot of it's just kind of like just taking pen to paper and just kind of thinking about where you're at, where you think you might need, and then talking to experts and support networks that can really help you out. So the other thing I would just recommend is just forming networks. I love how Nicole kind of quickly went online and shared her story and started connecting with other people who are interested in helping her out or helping other businesses. I think forming networks with other entrepreneurs or people who are part of your impacted community, it really helps because you do information sharing. You're getting trusted advice. I remember during pandemic, I had this text chain with other entrepreneurs, and I would ask them, "Are you going through the same thing as I am? What do you think about this potential solution I'm exploring?" And they would just give me on-time advice. And so that helped a lot. So scenario analysis, information gathering, evaluating the resources that are being offered to you to make sure that makes sense for you, and then just forming networks, I think is really key.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse. I think, one of the things that when I think about this is, there are climate disasters like wildfires, but then there are also like the pandemic and COVID, and what did we learn from that experience? And I think we probably all have lessons that we learned, right? It makes me think about, what are we doing to prepare our small businesses for the next one, right? Is there a checklist? So I know when with the PPP and COVID, a lot of small business owners didn't have their paperwork in order, didn't have electronic copies of their taxes or their articles of incorporation or even their insurance policies or any of these things. And I think it was overwhelming. And they also didn't realize that some of the vendors that they pay, like an ADP for payroll, could help them with things like the employee retention tax credit, right? That if they tried to do it themselves, like myself, it was hard to understand how to apply for this ERTC, this employee tax credit. But I called ADP and they're like, we have a program, we handle it for you. And so I started sharing that with others. I said, would you use a payroll service? Check if they do that for you. And I have a small business. At the time I had less than 5 employees, but to me, just knowing that I could go to a company that I process payroll with for that support was huge. And I started to share that with others. Another friend had 90 employees and she was able to get about $400,000 worth of taxes back just by me telling her to call ADP. So I share that as an example is, the more that we can share what works and what doesn't, the better. And I think I'm hoping that some of the lessons that even these agencies learned during the COVID business outreach process helped change what we're doing now. And I wanted to hear from Stephen and Pat, are there lessons that you took, like maybe you thought something would work, during COVID outreach and small business awareness and education efforts that didn't work, and how are you doing it differently now?
First, we actually have on our website, the Together for LA website, as well as LADC website. So just go either togetherforla.org or LADC. Then you'll see a link. Within the Business Assistance tab, you're going to have a LADC's Guide to Planning for Business Operations After a Natural Disaster. So that way, to Jesse's point, right, the step-by-step instruction, what we learned before, you at least have a guide to basically have help you start thinking through. Lesson learned is that a lot of the times we saw small businesses immediately start grabbing whatever's in front of them, start applying for everything. And later on, they realized that actually they shouldn't have taken that loan because they didn't know when they're going to be able to bring in revenue again. So even though, right now there are really great packages and really great programs through SBA, for example, that provides you with low interest rate loan, and there's defer payment and defer interest. But you really have to look at your business plan first to see when you're thinking about the recovery effort, whether you should take it on at this moment so that you're not going through all that paperwork process later on to realize that you actually don't need it. At the same time, the other thing is I think a lot of folks rush right in because whatever's in front of them, they are afraid this is a scarcity mindset, which can happen. But right now, for example, we've been working with the County of Los Angeles, with the state government, and we know that they're currently designing a business interruption fund, likely coming out as grants. But they're not going to be able to issue that right away because a lot of them are still fighting the fires. They're still dealing with the current situation that's not completely contained yet. So they can't move to recovery because they're still dealing with life, safety, and property protection. So when they're able to fully switch over, that's when they can dedicate that resource. When those resources become available, that becomes another option for the businesses to be able to choose from. So jumping into it 2 weeks into the disaster sometimes might be a bit rushed. So I would say take the time. And then for one final point is, Nicole, what you said before really struck me because I think you're saying that you're taking care of your business first, right? A lot of small businesses are taking care of their business, not themselves. Because this is going to be such a long marathon of recovery, what we found last time, and people have been talking about it during COVID, is their mental health. It's about taking care of themselves. And I haven't heard that much about it right now for the fire because people are rushing into it again. And in order for you to really sustain your ability to recover, really taking care of your mental health is going to be important. I graduated from UCLA social worker school, so I'm a social worker by training. So really want to advocate and push for folks. And that's why on our website, we actually put in mental health resources that are available to them. Take time to basically have a moment to really take care of yourself and your community as well. They need you and you need you. So if you don't take care of yourself, it's going to be very hard for you to start planning ahead.
Yeah, I would add to that. As Stephen said, we're very much in a marathon here. Like we have to go the distance, so pacing is important. In terms of things that from an SBDC's perspective, we learned through other major disasters, COVID, that type of thing. One is just how fluid these situations can be. Stuff changes all the time. So we have really embraced being able to have daily sessions where we do webinars where we run through whatever the latest resources are. We have live Q&As so that people can get questions answered directly. And I expect this will occur throughout this response, but definitely during COVID, there were webinars where stuff was getting updated live in the moment during the webinar. And so I think those types of forums are really important. As Jesse touched on, I think having networks are really important. You do sort of trade notes and things like that. So that's what we try to do with our webinars, but we can't be everywhere. So I think it's incumbent on businesses going through this to rely on your networks too and share stuff and get questions answered. Press on us to get those answers as well. In terms of financial resources, I completely agree with Stephen that there is sort of this scarcity mindset going in, signing up for everything possible. I think the flip side of that is we learned through the pandemic is that people do get really used to getting grants. And we've already heard from people like, oh, I'll take this SBA EIDL loan because I'm sure it'll be forgiven. Well, you should not expect that. That's not how this works. I don't think we're going to see federal grants like PPP again. I think we'll see local stuff, maybe even statewide stuff, but do not expect those, sort of larger programs at the federal level. That's just not how they respond to disasters. COVID was a very unique nationwide experience. So, I would say be careful and have a plan of any resource. Don't just jump on things. But flip side, like, don't just pass it up because you're waiting on a grant. Those, may not be as plentiful as they had been, and there's always a lot of competition for those. So I think the key thing there is to really think through where your business is going to be the next 12, 18, 24 months, and how you can sustain, operations as you are, rebuilding and trying to recover from these impacts.
Okay, great. We are going to get into audience Q&A shortly. So there is a Q&A function in the Zoom. Please feel free to enter your questions there, and we will respond to them as they come in. But before we do that, we have, this tremendous opportunity of having Nicole with us, taking time out of her day to be here with us as an impacted small business owner and, local resident there. I would love to, if you're open to sharing a little bit about your story of how it is just to navigate both the personal and the business side, and what you found helpful. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking. I found out that my home had burned down when I was out of the country. And I actually flew back early because my first instinct was, I just need to be there. I just need to be in my community. I want to start by saying I'm in a very fortunate position that a lot of business owners aren't in. I have pretty much no payroll. I have no perishables. I'm in a unique spot where a lot of the pressing costs do not weigh over my head. So I'm in a unique spot to help in a way that others aren't. And that was really just my primary focus. I think some of it is, as a business owner, I just want to do what I can. I wake up and do, that's what I do all day long. Also for me, my house had burned down, but my shop is intact. So by being at work, it was a source of comfort for me. It's a way to feel normal. It's a way to feel connected to my community. I wanted to give, I didn't know how to do that exactly, but I thought of a way to give free wine to people who lost their homes. It's illegal to give alcohol away. So what I did was created sets for people to purchase for very inexpensively that we subsidized, and used donated wines to do so as well. So it would cost us nothing. But basically angel donors could purchase wine on someone's behalf. Someone who lost their home could just come and pick up 2 free bottles from us. We just needed their address, their ID. And what was really impactful about that is not just the ability to give somebody some brevity in their day. Obviously, wine is not the most important thing. It is not an essential need. But the part that was the most, healing, I think, was having people in our community know that somebody else in their community is thinking of them. And when I'm thinking of my personal healing, I mean, what I have shared is I have plenty of time to grieve. I don't have plenty of time to help. And that has remained my thought and focus. If that changes, I'm happy to step away. I'm not a martyr. I'm not pretending that I'm not going through something difficult as well. But I will say, from a personal perspective, I'm connecting with people on a daily level that are in my boat. I don't have really close friends or family members who've lost their home. I'm actually finding healing through the community and through my work, which is also kind of a unique thing. I have had zero time to navigate the resources available, whether they're professional or personal. I've asked people to fill out things for clothing or a mattress giveaway on my behalf. I think that's been a really smart directive, is just asking people to do the things for me that I don't have time to do myself. My community knows I'm doing what I can to help, and they want to help me. I think a lot of business owners don't want to ask for help, and help doesn't mean someone giving you money. Help doesn't mean taking a volunteer in, but help might mean telling someone, hey, can you stamp some bags for us? We have 1,000 bags that need to get stamped, and having someone say yes. So it's changed the way that I operate. It's changed the way that I execute things. And yeah, I obviously feel a very personal connection to my community, or else I wouldn't be doing this. I don't know what it looks like for me personally long term. I don't know how or when I will go back to business as usual. I personally don't want to reopen my store to customers to come in. Our usual way of business is fussing over what somebody's going to pair with the dinner. I'm a former sommelier. I love wine. I love talking about the producers and the intricate, and like, I just am not there. So I invite any business owner to also like kind of be where you're at. I've shaped our business to function in a way that's okay for me and my healing process, which means I'm pretty much only interacting with people who have been affected by fires or are purchasing wine to help those who have been. But the real answer is I don't know. I think most people in my position would say the same thing. They don't really know what they need. They need everything, and also are too overwhelmed to take things in. So I think what I'd recommend is just checking in with people. If you are in a position like me where you're personally and professionally affected, I think it's really smart to do what you can to organize your thoughts in a way where you can and do ask for help. If you tell everyone around you, you don't need, like, oh, you're fine, people are just going to start dropping off baked goods and sweatshirts that you don't need, and you're going to be inundated. And for me, the biggest time constraint has been, and it's such a blessing, how many people love our business and how many people want to make sure I'm okay. So I had to kind of funnel that. I just wrote on our social media, hey, if I need something, I'm going to post it on our story. So I'll post on our story, hey, can somebody bring me Sensodyne toothpaste? I've been using Crest from a donation center and my teeth hurt. And then as soon as that need is met, I take the note down. So things like that, basically telling people, hey, this is how I'm going to ask for help if I need it. Otherwise, and my needs are met. I think you do need to be as proactive as you can just for your own time and your own preservation. But my community has been phenomenal with that. I've had people show up in ways simply by knowing how to, which has been great. But yeah, long story short, I don't know. Every day is different. My answer next week would probably be different than today.
Yeah, I think it was interesting for me to hear you say, like, people want to be able to go in and support you and have you do the thing that you do best and like help them. But I think, and I've seen that also with the event industry, because the award season, Grammys, Oscars, etc. A lot of these, even if the Grammys goes on, a lot of the side events were canceled, right? And we're impacted by that. We support the music industry from a sustainability perspective on a lot of those events, and others within the event industry have also talked about that the catered meals, catered events, the security teams, the AV teams, the set building teams, the transportation teams, all of those that would have worked these events, now it's been paused or canceled, right? And some of those individuals who would have worked, they also are impacted, their homes, and so they need the work. And so it's this kind of strange situation where things are being canceled because they don't want to do that during this period, but then folks who need the work don't have the work now. And I think that's where it's also like, how do we take care of team members, employees, those types of things, while balancing like the emotions of we don't want to do this event right now. And it sounds like you're dealing with that same kind of juxtaposition. Yeah. Okay. What resources have helped? Like, are there any that you could share? Like, someone sent you this link and it did help, or there was a webinar that you watched and you found information from there. Anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I haven't searched for those hardcore resources. I mean, I had my FEMA interview. That's the only formal like government assistance I've gone through. Again, leaning on the community. I'm a few blocks away from the fire station on Caltech campus. We're good friends with the guys in that station. They knew I had come back from LAX, went straight to the shop to do what I'm doing. And the president of the Pasadena Firefighters Association had said, hey, I'm giving out $250 gift cards with the California Fire Foundation, come by. I didn't have time for it. They made sure that I got one. So just leaning on your community and letting them know what you're doing. I haven't had any other hardcore resources other than asking those in my immediate circle for help. I've had people help with clothing that work in that industry, or I've had a lot of offers for housing. So it's really just been communal based. I have not looked into any formal government nonprofit organizations yet.
Okay, great. And thank you to Joseph from UCLA alumni, who's been manning the chat this whole time. We really appreciate it. We did add our LinkedIn contacts there. We're open to connecting online if we can be helpful to those who are watching. We did get a question that came in that's near and dear to my heart because it's talking about the climate side of the story here. So the question is, 2024 was the hottest year on Earth, and as the climate change continues to worsen, how can insurance providers help ensure Angelinos don't lose everything in the next fire? So it's talking about the nature of the disaster and the idea that we could face this, we will face similar things in the future, and how do we build that resilience into the plan here, especially with the insurance piece. So Stephen or Pat, did you want to take that one?
No, no, but I'll try to step in. It's hard to speak for the insurance sector right now. We've seen that there are a number of different insurance companies are departing California because of the higher risk, and so it's becoming more and more difficult for homeowners and businesses to basically find insurance plans that can cover their needs, and that's why the California Fair Plan (FAIR) is basically a last resort to basically cover those who are not being covered. So as we're moving forward, there might be additional partnership that needs to be done with government, especially state government and local government, to provide that support. Stepping away from insurance, how do we make ourselves more resilient? Depending on, because there are going to be a number of different natural disasters from wildfire. One of the things that we've also seen is we've learned from other wildfire disasters that sometimes the risk and the danger is not just the intense heat that's coming through. As you've seen in some of the aerial maps, right? There are trees that actually survive. So it's not that intense heat that's coming through, but it's the embers that are flying sometimes over a mile away to basically spark the fires. So how do you basically build more fire resistance design? How do you make sure that we have materials that are able to not only deal with the urban forest kind of interface, but a mile down the line with the homes once they start prevent the embers from going into the home in different ways. So it's really about thinking about updating the codes and doing fire prevention in a different way that will make us a bit more resilient, and hopefully later on will also impact the insurability of whether we can move forward.
Yeah, very similar. Like, I'm not an insurance expert, so I can't really speak to how that problem gets solved from an insurance carrier's point of view. But I do think that, revisiting building codes, in California, there's been a lot of attention put on that for earthquake and retrofits and all that. So I think we need to take the same sort of spirit when we face fire resiliency and looking at that. Especially, there's going to be a lot of rebuilding going on, and then a ton of infrastructure going on for the Olympics and all of that stuff. This is the perfect time to be considering fire resiliency in the midst of all that rebuilding.
Great. I know we're coming to the end here. I want to give each panelist a chance to just share, their advice from their perspective. If you were talking to a small business owner, what would you say? I think for me, getting your paperwork in order, the sooner the better before a disaster hits. So that's something that I'm really always focused on in my business. I love the idea that, Stephen, you have a guide on your website to prepare, because as the individual who asked the question alluded to, this is not going away. That I run a sustainability consulting firm, so this is what we study and what we talk about daily. And so building in that resilience to our city, to our businesses, our homes, I think the more that we can focus with and apply that lens and prepare, the better. I also think, for me, network and talking to others who are going through the situation, I learn the most from that. And I'm the type of person where if I learn something, I want to share it with everyone I know, right? And so I think the more that we can continue to share with each other, the better. And then thirdly, I feel like just being on this webinar, being able to host and serve as the moderator with this esteemed panel is a privilege. And I feel like we are the privileged ones to be able to be in a position to take time to think about this and to offer help. And so I think we want to make sure we do as much as we can with this privilege and push our policymakers and the powers that be to really develop programs that do offer support. And when I say support, I want grants, not loans. So I want to figure out, and I know, Jesse, we're having some offlines about this, how can we push for real support during these times for business owners, to support them and to support their employees as well. So those are my kind of closing thoughts. I'll turn it over to Jesse next.
Sure. I would just say, my thoughts always with, the small business owners. And I just want to highlight again, forming networks. I always think that even for those who aren't impacted, but who have family members who are impacted or friends, one of the best thing you can do is just gather information and share resources. That's what I try to do. Try to be that kind of source information for others. So I think that's really important. And I also, thought, it'd be great to kind of speak to, those of us who are in the business of economic development and disaster support, just to emphasize that disaster recovery, like politics, is local, right? And one thing I've observed is that there's just a lot of lack of data and misunderstanding about what constitutes a business community in most cities, and also what businesses are connected to that community that are going to be impacted. I know that from this fire, one of the first kind of alerts I got was from friends who had lost their homes, but were trying to help their gardener and their nannies find work because they had lost 80% of their business. And so I think we need to do a better job of understanding, okay, who is connected, who's going to be impacted, and what does that resource development look like to support those folks. So there's better work we can do to better understand the makeup of our community and integrate that information to hazard mitigation plans, et cetera. So I'm speaking mostly to our economic development folk, because I know this webinar will be shared widely, but we can do a better job of supporting our communities and advancing recovery.
Okay. Pat?
Yeah, I think a few things. Having a plan for your business, especially disaster preparedness, is pretty critical. But if you didn't have that in place, you can definitely work with any of these resources to sort of backfill that and figure out your next moves. And I think that's pretty critical when you're looking at taking on potential resources that might include debt or relocation or any of those things. I want to remind people that a lot of businesses are home-based solopreneurs who may have, lost their home and their business at the same time. So people are going through a lot there, and those folks may not get a lot of sort of direct outreach. So if you know somebody like that, maybe they were a writer or, somebody who just had a consulting business at home, they're absolutely perfect for these resources. So please, refer your friends, tell us who we should be talking to. And then the last couple of things, one, legislators all the time rely on us to tell them, what are the needs of small business. And we absolutely want to be able to share that message up. But I think it's also important for businesses to talk to your legislators, call their district office, let them know what you need. If that's not being addressed, if your community isn't getting the attention it needs, talk to your elected officials, and that can be city, county, or state level. This information is very important to them because they serve the stakeholders, the constituents. And the last little thing I'll mention, a specific resource, the Small Business Administration, people think of them really as being small business focused, but in times of disaster, they're actually offering resources for homeowners and renters, people who have, sustained physical damage to their properties. And so don't think that SBA is just for business in this case. And it's very simple. You can go to mysba.gov and find their resources and, maybe get some sort of compensation going for, loss of your rental property or your actual home. So please take advantage of that. And you can do that at the same time you're taking advantage of things like the FEMA resources. And again, there's lots of folks like us that can help you walk through all that process.
Thanks, Pat. Stephen?
I have three quick things, short-term, midterm, and long-term consideration. Short-term is, I think, what folks are talking about. One of the things that the small business can control is basically their documents. Start basically getting the documents ready, whether it's lined up or not, but at least you have a collection of what you have, what you don't have, so that you're ready to go when the time comes. Second, as Nicole was talking about earlier as well, many businesses are not in the place to start thinking about what they need, what they don't need. It's not, the plan's not there, and it's okay. because you're dealing with a crisis situation. Be where you're at. It's okay that you don't have that plan in place. But when in the midterm, when you're ready for that to happen, you don't have to create that from scratch. There are a lot of the organizations, SBDC, LADC, and our partners, and just basically on the Together for LA website, we already have dozens and dozens of different partners that want to be involved. So they're going to be here to be able to support you, so you don't have to do it by yourself. Lean on those resources that are going to be available. So when the time comes, then you can basically say, hey, I need help here, ask for help. And then folks will basically be able to create those plans with you so that you're not doing it by yourself and starting from scratch. And then in the long term, this is where the planning and the resiliency becomes very important. Unfortunately, we've been hearing over the last 20, 30 years, this unprecedented events. This is once in a decade or once in a century fire that's been happening. It's going to keep happening, unfortunately, because the way that the world is right now. As the question was mentioned earlier, climate change continues to impact us, and we're going to see more and more of that. And the other thing is, if you track Dr. Lucy Jones' center and what she's warning, we have to be ready for earthquakes as well. So combined together, this is a time to start planning ahead for the future. So again, get your documents ready, go cloud-based, go to the planning guide that we've created for LADC so that you can actually follow this instruction. But the other thing is, in terms of the advocacy aspect, we also need the small businesses to come together. 94% of all LA County companies have less than 20 employees. I'm going to say that one more time. 94% of all LA companies have less than 20 employees. There are a lot of small businesses, and your voices are important and very powerful. But when they're not united, then basically people are not going to know how to dedicate the resources. When an emergency situation comes, as we're mentioning, right? These groups that are doing the work are going to be your local nonprofits and your local partners. A lot of times they're not funded and they're not resourced properly. So when an emergency happens, they're also going to be suffering as well. In the future, let's basically get all the small businesses together, advocate on behalf of your region or your community so that we can dedicate more resources. And when there's an emergency situation, these small nonprofits and these local groups can actually step up to be able to provide support instead of them also running to basically trying to figure out how to get additional resources coming in. I'll close with this. What we're seeing is whenever there's a natural disaster, whenever there's an urgent situation, you have all these amazing groups that are providing funding to national relief organization. And I've been hearing about these organizations that are collecting $10, $12 million already in the last 2 weeks. We're not seeing a dime here. LADC is a nonprofit organization here trying to basically do the work along with all our partners, but the money's going elsewhere and not to us. How do we basically create that system so that we can, LA County has 10 million people. This is one of the largest population in the United States. So we need to basically make sure that we're able to ensure the future safety. And so from the long-term perspective, we need the business community, small business community to come together so that we can protect ourselves and be more resilient.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. One resource I wanted to get in the chat was LA Fire Meals. That's local restaurants working together, and you can actually donate and pick a restaurant that will then send meals to an impacted family, and it's been working wonderfully. So just wanted to make sure to shout that out to support our local restaurant communities in the areas. And then Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you to close with your final thoughts, and then I'll turn it to Gloria after that.
Well, first off, I want to thank Jesse, Pat, and Stephen. The resources they've highlighted tonight are things I will be taking with me and using to fortify myself. So thank you for that. I think they've all touched on kind of a zoomed out picture really, really well. Obviously, not my area of expertise. The only resource that I can speak to is one that every small business has, and that's your community, whether that's your vendors, your customers, your neighbors. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Don't be afraid to let them know how they can help you. I think that's really, really important. Los Angeles is a city that loves its small businesses. And if they don't know that you need help, then you might not receive it. I will say, offload as much as you can. For example, the resources highlighted today, I will probably offload to my good friend who's a lawyer and say, can you just start filling out the paper for me? The things that you already know, the answers to? And then can you just verbally ask me the questions you need to write down? Because I can't look at more papers. Like whatever you can delegate or give off to somebody else. There are so many people that want to support you, that want to make sure you're okay. And if you take the second, if you can, to organize your thoughts and just think of something that you can hand off, I think it'll really help you and your business be in a stronger spot. As has been outlined, there are so many resources available to us, and there's only so much of our attention. So let other people worry for you. Let other people help you. Let other people help get you in a position to have the help that you need. That I couldn't stress enough how important that is.
Thank you, Nicole. And please, you have our contact information. Reach out to us if we can be helpful, please. I'm going to now thank you all extremely for sharing your time and your expertise and your resources with us today and with Bruins and beyond. And I'll turn it over to Gloria Ko for closing logistics.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. To our panelists, Jamie, Pat, Stephen, Nicole, Jesse, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights and coming together so quickly. It's the power of our UCLA community, our Bruin community, for those who just want to come together, share insights and help others. It's truly amazing. And so this has been such an informative hour. And as you all share, this is just the start of the process of recovery. And I really loved how Stephen, put it into like short-term, midterm, long-term. We got to take it in phases. And, as we take each step, know that your Bruin community, whether you're a graduate or not, UCLA is here for Los Angeles and for those that are suffering. And so to also our small business owners, the UCLA Alumni Association does have resources to support you as well. And we have a community support page that you can access and look at. And again, we will be sending out a list of all the different links. We know we're very link heavy this webinar, but we will be sending that out so that you have it. And we will be sharing this video as well. So for those, if you want to share this with people or, as we move this through the community, know that you can reach out to our speakers, reach out to us here at the Alumni Association as well. And so thank you, everyone. We hope that you have a great and safe week ahead. And thank you, everyone. Go Bruins!